First of all, Mr Ashworth, I have to very begrudgingly congratulate you. I was at the Leicester-Arsenal game at the weekend. You and I had a little Twitter spat before, and I have to eat humble pie, which is not something, as you can imagine, I find very palatable. But your boys, Leicester, were fantastic and gave us a lesson in football. Congratulations.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your time in Leicester. That's actually the area that I'm hoping to be re-elected for. It was the area I represented as the MP and hope to get re-elected in. But I saw your videos with Jamie Vardy and so on, you know, after the match. So I saw you sucking up to Jamie Vardy, having a party with Jamie Vardy.
Yeah.
You were, so,
I'll be a lot happier when Brendan Rodgers and Vardy have joined Arsenal. I can tell you that.
He's a terrific manager, isn't he?
Yeah. Well,
Brilliant.
can I just interrupt this little football loving, because I'd actually like to point out the Labour Party would like to be doing as well as Leicester are doing right now, because the latest polls show that there is a 14-point gap that has opened up between Labour and the Conservatives. What's happening that actually they're getting away from you? What are you doing wrong at the moment in your campaigning?
Well, I mean, like Leicester chasing Liverpool, the Labour Party is chasing the Tory Party in this campaign, and we're doing that by putting forward sensible policies which will improve the lives of the British people. So for today, we're announcing a huge increase in the NHS budget, so we don't have to have people waiting so long. You know, we had these stories or pictures of elderly people on trolleys in corridors at a hospital in Nottingham last week. Absolutely heartbreaking stuff. 4.5 million people on the waiting list. People with cancer waiting beyond 2 months for treatment. It's quite disgraceful. So we're saying, put more money into the NHS. Let's recruit more doctors, more nurses. Let's invest in the state-of-the-art equipment for the future to really improve cancer care. So we've announced, as you said, 26 billion extra today in real terms. If you do that in cash terms, because that's the way Boris Johnson likes to present these figures, it's actually £40 billion extra. It's a real boost for our NHS today.
But you would expect, John Ashworth, wouldn't you, after almost 10 years of austerity under a Conservative government, that you should be doing a lot better with the public. What do you think is holding you back?
Well,
do you think it's ambiguity over Brexit and the second referendum? Do you think it's the Lib Dems taking such a strong position in terms of stopping Brexit and revoking Article 50? We know that a majority of Labour voters voted for Remain. What do you think it is that means you can't land that blow?
Well, we've just got to continue campaigning on the issues that matter to people. So I'm doing all I can to campaign on the NHS, because when you've got, like, you know, there was people in with glaucoma at Southampton went blind because they were waiting so long for an operation. A woman who was pregnant severely lost her sight and hasn't been able to see the face of her daughter, as it was reported, because of these long waiting lists in the NHS.
Nobody disputes that what is happening to the NHS and the pressure they are under is absolutely shocking.
Absolutely shocking and heartbreaking.
The Conservatives point out that if you introduce your proposed 4-day working week, that could actually cost the NHS more than £6 billion a year. Is that something that you are still sticking with, the 4-day working week?
No. I mean, I saw Matt Hancock put that out last night. I mean, that was what... I mean, it's hopeless, isn't it? I mean, it's not true. It's just nonsense.
Hang on a moment. Isn't the 4-day working week something that you've backed?
No, we're not coming in on the day one of a Labour government and saying, right, everyone in the NHS, four days, everybody out on Friday. Of course not.
OK, hang on a moment. The Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, announced at the party conference in September he wanted to see a marked cut in the average working week from 37 to 32 hours with no loss of pay. So are we just to discount things that we've heard at Labour conference? No,
what he said is we're going to set up a commission over 10 years to look at how we can improve or reduce people's working hours on average across a year by driving up productivity, whether the new technology that's coming online, the automation, as we call it, the robots and so on, which will be part of the economy in the next 10 to 15 years, whether that means we can reduce people's working hours. But the Tory party is trying to sort of pretend that...
it's only a proposal if you can find automated ways to replace that work.
Yeah, and drive up productivity, which has been on its knees and under the last 10 years. I mean, the Tories are trying to say, look, you know, if you get elected on December the 13th... If the Tories are trying to say, if Labour get elected on December the 13th, everybody in the NHS is on a 4-day week.
This election is likely to be about trust and about Brexit. It's going to become effectively the Leave-Remain election in many ways.
And Brexmas election.
And it will come down to which leader, I suspect, and which party we can trust. Can we trust Jeremy Corbyn? Can we take him at his word? When he makes statements, can we believe him?
Yes, I think you can, yeah.
OK, I'd like to play you something.
Sure.
This is when he appeared on Good Evening Britain, our inaugural evening version of this show, and I asked him what he felt about honouring the first referendum. Let's have a listen to what he said.
Sure.
Well, I say a referendum took place. It was a single-question referendum. A result was delivered. I campaigned for a different result. We didn't get it. You have to respect the result of that referendum.
Do you believe there should be a people's vote on the final deal?
It's not in our plans at all.
So no. Right. So pretty straightforward. That the result of that referendum should be honoured. You have to respect the result of that referendum. And there were no plans at all for a people's vote on a final deal. It couldn't have been any clearer.
Yeah.
And yet here we are with Labour heading into this election with a completely diametrically opposite position. Now you're campaigning for a people's vote on the final deal. The thing he said was not in the plans at all. Now you're not honouring the result of that referendum. You're doing the complete opposite, in fact. You don't want to honour it. So what is going on here? Why can we trust Jeremy Corbyn when he's been such a brazen, forked-tongue exponent of thought processes on Brexit on this very desk?
Well, because I think at the time of that interview, we were trying to get a deal passed in Parliament. Theresa May put forward proposals. It wasn't acceptable in Parliament. Of course, Boris Johnson voted against Theresa May's proposals, don't forget. We put forward proposals for what we call a customs union arrangement in Parliament. We voted on that. We voted on that a few times. It didn't get enough support in Parliament. And in the end, Theresa May's deal was rejected. Now things have moved on. We're saying, because there's a general election, we're now saying, well, because a deal hasn't been agreed in Parliament, whatever deal we will renegotiate, we'll put it to the people.
How did you vote? How did you vote in the referendum?
Oh, I voted for Remain, yeah.
And how will you be campaigning yourself if it comes to it?
Well, I've always said that I think our future is better if we remain within the European Union.
So when Labour says now that actually what they want is to throw it back to the people, in fact, if you're the government, almost every member of the government, Emily Thornberry, you, Jeremy Corbyn and others, actually just want to not respect the result of the referendum, as Jeremy Corbyn said you would do, but you want to actually actively campaign to stop Brexit happening. That's really the truth, isn't it?
But if the people will have the final say, and will act on what they say. I mean, that's democracy.
But the people had their say in the referendum. I mean, do you understand why people, when they hear that, they go, hang on, I thought we had our say. As Jeremy Corbyn said, a result was delivered. It was a single-question referendum. I campaigned for a different result. We didn't get it. You have to respect the result of that referendum. The people had their say. Labour wants to ignore that and say, that didn't happen, we're going to have another one. And yeah, I say, as someone who voted Remain, that's not democracy. That's not respecting the referendum. That's disrespecting democracy and the referendum.
But MPs in Parliament of all parties haven't been able to agree on the correct way to interpret that referendum, have they?
Mr. Ashworth, can I ask you if...
But the problem is... hang on. The problem is you want to Remain, and so do most of the people in the shadow cabinet. That's the problem. And so does most of Parliament. 3/4 of Parliament voted to Remain like you. And there has been no will of Parliament to deliver Brexit. There's been a will to stop Brexit happening.
Okay.
And Labour, who promised to respect the referendum, is now plotting and planning to stop Brexit happening. You've just said that if there was a second vote, and you were the government and you called a second vote, you would actively campaign to stop Brexit happening.
And my question was going to add to that, Mr. Ashworth, because I just want to add a corollary, which is if I was a voting Brexiteer in your constituency or wanting to vote for the Labour Party, what motivation then, if you're all going to campaign for Remain, does a Brexiteer have to vote for the Labour Party?
Well, we will actually negotiate a new deal, which is in the interest of jobs, in the interest of the, maintains the environmental safeguards, the workplace rights. We think will actually be better for the NHS because we'll have the smooth transition of medicine imports and exports
and
at the
then
borders.
You would campaign against it.
And then we would put that to the British people.
And you would campaign against it.
Well, we would put that to the British people, and ultimately the British people would decide.
Yeah, but you've just said you would campaign to remain. So you would apparently get a great deal, even though the EU would know that all of you at the top of the Labour Party want to stay in the European Union. So what's in it for them to give you a good New Deal? Nothing. And then you're all going to actively campaign against this great New Deal you claim to have fought and won for the country. Do you understand how ridiculous this sounds?
I don't think it is ridiculous. We're negotiating a New Deal to safeguard jobs, safeguard the various environmental and workplace rights that we get through our membership of the European Union. Keep us in a customs union trading arrangement, which is the interest of prosperity of families. But then we'll also put the option to the British people that if they want to remain, they can do.
Okay.
That's democracy.
No, the one thing it probably isn't is democracy. But let's move on to the security of the country. We had Emily Thornberry on, who may be Foreign Secretary in a few weeks' time. And I asked her a hypothetical question because I'm very curious about Labour's position on national security. You support the renewal of the Trident nuclear missile system at a cost of up to $200 billion to the taxpayer, and yet your leader is on record as saying he would never use a nuclear deterrent, which prompts the question, why would you support renewing something you would never lose? I painted a hypothetical to Ms Thornberry because she was curious as to what I was talking about. I said this, and let's see what her answer was. A rogue state, or by a nefarious state, or by some regime that's gone rogue, they launch a nuclear strike at somewhere in the north of England, Manchester, Newcastle, right? And we now know they are planning to send another one to London. What does Jeremy Corbyn do?
Who knows? I mean, and that's kind of the point.
I'd like to know, with respect, who knows, says the Foreign Secretary, about a situation where this country has been attacked and is about to be attacked again, and we have the ability to defend ourselves with a weapon system that Labour has endorsed for renewal? And the answer to the question of what we would do in that hypothetical is who knows? Can you tell us, if anybody knows, at the Labour Party, what you would do in that eventuality?
Well, the reason we have a nuclear deterrent is to deter enemies from attacking us along the lines that you have talked about. I would never, ever compromise the safety of the people of this country. The security comes first, and our enemies have to know that we would use that deterrent. That's why we have it, and that's why it protects us.
But your leader is on record as saying he would never use it.
Well, I think a Labour government, and the Labour governments throughout their history have always protected this country. These have not necessarily been, party political issues, as it were. I'm not saying you're being party political, but Labour governments have always protected this nation, and we will protect this nation in the future.
Okay,
I'm absolutely convinced of that.
But you appreciate that what you're saying is completely opposite to what Jeremy Corbyn is on record as saying. I mean, you're saying that you would use a deterrent if you had to. Jeremy Corbyn has said he wouldn't.
Well, the whole point of having a deterrent is that it deters our enemies, because at the back of our minds is the thought or the suggestion that we might use it.
Right.
And when it comes to protecting
by the way,
people,
what you're saying makes complete sense. The problem is you won't be Prime Minister. If you win, Jeremy Corbyn is Prime Minister, and it's on him. And he has said, I will never use a nuclear weapon.
Well, a Labour government will protect the country. It will protect the people of this country. Security comes first, and that's my.
Listen, I am pleased to hear your answer. I just can't square it with what Jeremy Corbyn's position is, or indeed what Emily Thornberry, the Foreign Secretary in waiting, what her position is. So, I mean, are you going to tell Jeremy Corbyn that to actually have an effective nuclear deterrent, he has to be prepared to use it?
I mean, I think Emily was. I mean, these hypotheticals are, politicians are always sort of say, "Oh, don't answer hypotheticals," and that, I think Emily was sticking to that reasonable principle, because these things are always very complex, aren't they, in reality? But look, fundamentally, we will protect this country. I will protect this country as a member of a Labour cabinet. I will make those.
OK,
and
so
I will ensure
in that hypothetical I painted to Emily Thornby that she couldn't answer, where we've had a strike somewhere in the north of England, say, and we know there's about to be another one, would you believe and want your government to, in that eventuality, use our own missile system to defend ourselves?
I mean, yes, of course. Look,
that's all I need to know. That's all I was trying to get out of the potential Foreign Secretary. But of course, by saying that, you are saying something very different to your leader, and you appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, let me just emphasise, we would always follow the, what the military advice is. I mean, I'm not an expert on nuclear weapons, but if the clear military advice is to do what we need to do to defend this country, then of course we should do it.
Do you think it would be better for the safety of the country if you were Prime Minister, if you win? No, I'm serious question. Because you're able to answer the question in a way that is comforting to people. Jeremy Corbyn and Emily Thornby answer it in a way that is extremely discomforting. Are you really saying that it'll be fine if you're in charge?
No, I'm not saying that. I think Brendan Rodgers should be the Prime Minister, maybe.
And so we bring it back to football. John
Ashworth, good to speak to you. Thank you very much. Maybe you can have a word with Jeremy Corbyn and explain to him how a nuclear deterrent works.
Thank you very much indeed.